Hey guys, it's your boy Rubin coming at you for the second time in week 4 here. This is day 3 of your work this week. All you gotta do is watch this video and answer the question like I normally have you do. And then tomorrow you're going to take some of this information and review it in this worksheet that I put together that's kind of got some funny answers for you too. You pick the right answer and you'll have a nice study guide that you can use for this information afterwards. So here we go. This is just the basic, essential facts that I want you to know about Shakespeare. First of all, his lifespan, April 23rd, 1564 to April 23rd, 1616. Something that's of note there is that he died on the same day he was born. It's kind of interesting. It's also known that Miguel de Cervantes, who wrote Don Quixote, the great novelist, one of the greatest books of all time by any standard, he also died on the same day that Shakespeare died. And it's believed that Shakespeare also wrote his own version of the Don Quixote story in a play form, but that play did not survive. How many plays did Shakespeare write? No one knows for sure, but everyone kind of agrees that he at least wrote 37. And those plays were collected by John Hemming and Henry Condell, who released the first folio in 1623 for theater purposes. Again, they were just putting those together for people to be able to perform. They weren't thinking of it as a literary project. But of course, Shakespeare's body of work, in addition to being the most important dramatic body of work, is also considered the most important literary body of work. And you already know how I feel about it, so I won't ramble on anymore. In addition to the literary body of work that Shakespeare wrote, he also did 154 sonnets, half of which were written for the young man, and the other half which were written for the dark woman. He wrote some epic plays as well. Among his plays, you'll see them typically break down into 4 categories. Some of the plays like Romeo and Juliet are hard to pin down. Is that a comedy? It starts out as a comedy, and then when Romeo kills Tybalt, it kind of changes its tone into a kind of a tragic story. So, you have some plays that are kind of hard to break down, but for the most part, Shakespeare's plays can be broken down into comedy, tragedy, history, late romance. And the comedies are plays that are humorous, and they involve some kind of misunderstanding, and a comedy of errors takes place. The threat of death is always introduced, but people pull back happily and safely in the end, with some kind of wisdom having been learned. Tragedies are plays that follow the downfall of some kind of exceptional person, and we really see how his or her choices play out and how we kind of are victims, not so much of fate, but of our own choices that we make, which I think is really what's cool about the tragedies. The histories are this collection of plays that trace the lives of particular English monarchs, and then the late romances are his most hard to categorize and strange plays. It's a group of late plays that he wrote in his later years, and they involve supernatural elements, long-separated family members reuniting, and oftentimes the theme of forgiveness. Among the late romances, some of the standouts are The Tempest, which is one of my favorites, Pericles, Cymbeline, and A Winter's Tale. Of the comedies, you've got Twelfth Night, As You Like It, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Much Ado About Nothing. The 4 great tragedies are considered to be King Lear, Hamlet, Macbeth, and Othello. And then of the histories, just to name some, you've got Richard II, Henry IV, Henry V, King John, Richard III. Anyway, here's some of the terminology I would like you guys to know. Soliloquy, which is a long speech given by a character alone on the stage, which he or she explains their feelings and internal dilemmas, intentions, etc. That is spelled Soliloquy, and again, that's called soliloquy. An aside is a comment made by a character on the stage that is addressed to the audience and not intended to be heard by the others on the stage. Irony is a very complex thing. I could go on and on about that, but essentially, if you want to break irony down to its most essential definition, there's a contrast between what we expect to happen and then what really does happen. So irony can be defined as a contrast between expectations and reality. Dramatic irony is when the audience is aware of things on the stage that other characters are not. That's something that still is used a lot, especially in horror films. Like when you see In the Halloween film, we see Jamie Lee Curtis going up the stairs, and we know that Michael Myers is standing up there with a knife. She doesn't know it, so we're scared. It creates this feeling of tension. Double entendre I talked about last week. That's the pun, or the play on words. Simile is a form of metaphor that uses like or as. And metaphors is also another very complex thing to define. I don't want to start rambling because I'll go for 25 minutes talking about metaphor, but it's essentially the poetic device that is really kind of when we take it's how we understand the world. It's how we perceive the world. Language is metaphorical. It's the things that we use to represent things. Saying that love is a red rose. Well, love is not literally a red rose, but in poetic language, it's a way that helps us look at what love is. And words themselves are metaphorical, as if you've taken any of my English classes, you've heard me go on and on about that. A couple other quick points about Shakespeare. He came from illiterate parents. He had a very normal life, and he married a woman named Anne Hathaway. He left her, and he went to live in the big city of London. He left her at their home on Stratford-on-Avon is where they lived. She had 3 children, one of whom died, Hamnet. And when his wife, when he passed away, he left his wife his bed in the will. That was all he left her in the will, so that's kind of strange. So anyway, oh, by the way, if you want to see what Shakespeare looks like, because there's a lot of pictures of him on the internet, and some of them contradict each other, it's believed that there is a statue in the Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-on-Avon where he grew up, and there's a statue, a bust of him with the shoulders and the face, and he kind of has a corpulent, kind of a rotund, chubby face, and he's got the little Van Dyke with the mustache and the little chin hair and the bald skullet going back. He's not like an exceptionally handsome man. He just looks like an average Joe, kind of chubby. But that's apparently what he looked like. So if you want to look that up, you can. Anyway, I'm going to stop myself now so I don't get going for too long here. But those are some of the basic things I want you to know about Shakespeare. And you'll have a little worksheet that's kind of fun to fill out on that tomorrow. That's it for this week with the Rubin videos. Signing out from my office.